when I do
Yeah.
that.
Hi, I'm Kristen Clark, and I'm here with Bobby Hood, and this is the next installment of College Planning Untangled, where we provide real-life answers for parents of real-life kids. And Bobby, what's going on in your world today?
Oh, not much. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm really excited that we're getting to welcome our first guest today. That's really exciting.
It's fun, and I'll tell you, so I'm remote today. I'm traveling to work with a client in the Dallas area, and I got to tell you, I love the fact that I can do this anywhere. This is
Yeah,
so awesome,
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah,
and
that's wonderful.
yeah, and the fact that the three of us, Amy will come on and talk about this too, but we can work with anybody across the country, and it feels like we're right there with them, and it's totally amazing. Think about, 10 years or 20 years ago that you couldn't do this. So,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with my students, tutoring students both in Dallas and Austin. I used to live in Austin. Now I live in Dallas. I'm still tutoring students in Austin. I have students in Nashville. I have students in Baltimore. I have students all over the country. I have students in Europe. And and it's not just that. Also, if I happen to travel or my students happen to travel, often you tutor a student for 3 months or even 6 months. If they go on a trip, I can still tutor them while they're on the
mhm.
trip. You can tutor from anywhere as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, and I know it works the same for you and the same for Amy, who's about to join us. It really is, sort of the world we live in now. It's really great, and we've talked about it a little bit before, and I think probably we might even, in the future have a session where we talk about just how how the benefits of working online actually works, the mechanics of it. I think that'd be a neat topic. But today's topic is something that I'm really excited about because we're going to talk about college admissions essays, right? And like this is really interesting to me because as a tutor for the SAT and ACT, I did get trained in college admissions stuff, right? I have helped students with their college admissions from the beginning to end, picking out colleges and researching them and all that and helping them with essays. I've probably helped 15 or 20 students with the admissions process and probably 30 or 40 students with admissions essays, but I never really loved it because it's not my area of expertise. So tell me about who's joining us, Kristen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I realized when I was prepping for this show is, of course, I took all my notes about Amy, and communication is not one of my top strengths in the Strengths Finders world. And I was, trying to look all eloquent and practice before we got on there. And then I went, you know what? I'm trying to play in my weaknesses. I know better. I'm a strengths coach. So I'm going to play in my strengths. And yes, I'm going to tell you about Amy, but just know I'm going to be looking at my notes. And that's
Hey,
just real life.
that's how it goes. Hey, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
So, and I do know Amy, by the way. We're near and dear new friends. But what really drew me to Amy is her dedication to the kids that are this age. She was a high school teacher at one of the large nationally ranked high schools in the Chicago suburbs.
Oh, cool.
And she really just loves writing, number one. She especially loves writing for helping kids write for college admissions essays, which thank the Lord there are those people out there.
Yeah.
Like you said, not what you love to do. And the beauty of that is we've got Amy and other people like her that can take on that role. So I love that. Amy also was instrumental in putting together, she actually created her own online writing lesson for students. And she works with students across the country, like we talked about, like we are all doing. She has 2 masters in education.
Wow.
She has worked with over 1,000 students doing this. She has 4 kids of her own, which we all know how hard that is.
Oh,
And
man.
and another thing that I love about Amy, and the reason we brought her on this show, is she does have a passion for easing the stress that happens in a family around this time when they're thinking about colleges and how to get in. And the other part of that equation is she's easing the stress not only for the parents and the students, but on the student side, she's helping them gain confidence, which we know is a big part of this as well. So I'm going to flip a switch and we're going to get Amy on here.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
this is Amy Haskell. And here she comes.
All right.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Kristen and Bobby, for having me. I'm thrilled to be
Welcome.
here and delighted to share my story and answer any questions, and especially share some tips and strategies for parents and their rising seniors, and what they can take away to make this whole college application process less stressful and actually have a little fun with it. So did you want me to give a little background, a little bit more, Kristen, or just jump right into?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Alrighty. So I started actually as a change enablement business consultant, and then as I went for my second master's degree, I fell in love with teaching. So a lot of the students in my first master's program went on to get their PhDs, but I just loved being in the classroom. And so then I jumped at this fabulous English teacher position at the high school where I attended, up by Northwestern. And what became evident really quickly was when you want to write clearly, and I know, Kristen, you talked about communicating, one of the first components I find is to have clarity of thought. Whether you're writing about Romeo and Juliet, or The Heart of Darkness, or yourself, right? Specifically with the high pressure college admissions essays. So I started tutoring one-on-one with kids, and I became so connected to the confidence that I saw in the kids on a one-on-one level, and the peace of mind. And I'll never forget, one mom said to me, Amy, you've given our whole family peace because our daughter understands how to write now. So that was a huge motivator, because sometimes when you're teaching and standing up in front of a sea of 20, 25 kids, you're not sure who you're reaching. But the one-on-one had really tugged at my heartstrings. And then logically, I saw these kids' grades just in English class just skyrocket. So then the first online class I built was How to Succeed in English Class, your freshman year and sophomore year. So I sold those.
Oh, that's so great.
So I built an online platform. And now here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I find one of the biggest causes for stress are writing these college admissions essays. So again, started one-on-one, and then small groups, and then the demand for my tutoring was more that I could handle. So a business mentor said, Amy, why don't you bottle up the best of your writing teaching and just your who you are as a person, right? Building confidence and create something so you can help kids all over. And so that's what I've done. And so the past 2 summers, I've taken it through a beta test 2. Now we're finishing up the final product, and it's a joy to balance emotion with the logistics of these steps that go into this specific essay, the personal statement or the Common App essay.
Well, I'll tell you, Amy, I mean, I think it's hard for anybody to write about themselves. Yeah. We're so used to deflecting, and maybe even women more than men, that we have a tendency of promoting everybody else besides ourselves. So, how do you start that? How do you get them engaged?
That's an excellent question. And where the high school where I taught before, actually, when you were a freshman and a sophomore, the writing curriculum was so rigorous that you actually had practice in a sneaky, fun way writing the personal statement, because you wrote a narrative essay, right? So the instructions were something to the extent of, talk about an instance in your life or a combination of experiences where you really went through either a difficult time or you saw yourself change. So these kids at this fabulous high school, by the time they were seniors, I would say to them, look, you've done it.
Yep.
Maybe we're going to
already
change.
got an experience writing that essay. That's great.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, if you have not been taught how to reflect upon yourself, and so you have the content, right? And then the second part of it is the specific writing technique.
What do you mean?
Okay, so I would say to my students, you're a storyteller, and the greatest sin of a storyteller is to be boring, right? So if you're talking about, so then how do you make your story come alive? What writing strategies and tricks do successful authors like J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter series, use to make their characters and the scenes come alive? So we would go through sensory detail, right? And did you know that when kids are asked to write a story, the number one overused sensory detail is what? It's what things look like.
Well, sight and
Sight, or it was a bright sunny day, or a dark rainy day.
It's all the weather. It's all the feelings. Yes. It's every essay that every first draft essay every student's ever handed to me begins with a paragraph that's in the middle of a scene, and it's how the weather was outside. It's always reflecting the turmoil in their feelings inside, but it was so stormy and rainy and whatever, and it was the weather reflecting the adversity inside them. And they always, I guess, think that this is a very original way to open the essay. And I think that's the thing I assume that you're having to show these students is that these college admissions counselors have read 10,000 essays, and they all begin that way. And the one thing I guess that I learned when I was being trained about this is that what you're trying to do is show something about you as a person. And the moment that they see that first paragraph that's the same as every other first paragraph they've ever seen, they know that this essay is not going to show anything about you as a person. It's going to tell that same story. I had a bunch of turmoil and then I learned something,
Right.
So how do you get them from there to that? And then you said earlier also the something about the joy of this process, right? And unlocking joy and things. And I think that's what probably our listeners who are watching this are saying.
Yeah, right.
This is I know that all of the parents who are watching this are saying the essay is just probably one of the things that generates the most stress and screaming in their households, which is it's due in 2 weeks. I've been telling you for 6 months to start. You haven't even written a first draft, and and they keep saying, "Oh, I'll do it next week."
Right. So exactly. So that's one way to think about it. I mean, if you think about all of college applications, one way that parents and kids choose to think about this is it's incredibly stressful. But what if we flipped that? What if we said, this is really cool. Whether I like writing or not, this is the ability to do two things: to clarify who I am as a person, how I see the world, and what I have to offer. I mean, that's intense.
Yeah.
Right. That's so part of the platform, my course takes students through that process. So they start off saying, what am I going to write about? I'm so stressed out. And I'll say, wait, but what if you're not? What if we're going to take this step by step? And the finished product, whether you're an A writer, an AP, or a B- writer in regular, is the most beautiful piece of writing, technique-wise and content-wise. And then they're like, oh, tell me how, right? And we won't even get to how, but think about that. And think about with the whole college application also, right? There's so much hurry, driven by fear, right? So don't you think that the writing part of this, the essay part of it, is just a small piece of the puzzle that could actually be a really pleasant moment of growth for the kids and for the parents, right?
Can you give us an example?
Of course. So let's just say you're working with a client, you have a student who's really struggled to keep up a B in math related classes. So what does that mean? The chemistry and physics, there's a lot of stress. And throughout this process, the student comes to the realization of, look, I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to be a math major. I'm not going to be an accountant. And so all of these eureka moments, these light bulbs start to go off. And this is what we all want, whether we're an 18-year-old senior or a middle-aged person. We want to move closer to self-actualization and clarity with our identity, right? And so to give you a specific example is when these pieces start to click into place. So Bobby, I wonder, how you even, and I don't know if what you do with the kids with the SAT prep. So for example, so for me, the math part of the SAT was not as strong as my verbal, but I was okay with that.
Yeah.
right? But I can tell you right now, the first time I took the SAT and I got a lower score, I was so frustrated, right? Why?
Yeah.
I go in
Yeah.
to see my math. I mean, I was a motivated, organized student, but still.
Yeah.
But towards the end of the whole process, wow, this is more who I am. I'm not going to become a math teacher or an actuary or a physicist, right? And so that is how I think, Kristen, when students start to gain clarity on who they are, whether it's through their strengths or pulling all these pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the best part is when they can actually communicate that in their essay.
So
Well,
I want to,
yeah.
where are you going, Bobby? Because I'd love
Well,
to hear an example of a really good essay. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just to say something, are you able to hear me? Am I muted?
Yep.
I can hear you.
No,
Okay,
you're
yeah.
good.
Okay, so no, this just made me think of something, and this relates really to a lot of things that Kristen, that you've brought up before, and this really ties a lot of things together for me. And this is really interesting, which is like, Kristen, what you do, you help students figure out their strengths and what they ought to do in life, right? And Amy, you were bringing up, like how does this relate to what I do as a tutor? Well, part of what I do is help students realize, that what their skills are just in the realm of SAT and ACT, and realize, you should try to get the score that you're capable of, and realize that the SAT and ACT don't actually reflect your true potential. Right. Your performance in your English classes and math classes and science classes, that reflects your true potential, probably much more than SAT or ACT. Those scores don't reflect your true potential. But I help students to get the score that perhaps does, a score that better matches, because your initial score does not, right?
Right.
And so, but I do say, you're not trying to you don't need to get this score. You just need to get a score that reflects what you can do. And if that score is X or Y or Z, then you should be proud of it, as long as it reflects what you can do, right? And then you should be happy with that, right? And you learn things about yourself through that process. And Amy, you're saying that students should focus on the things that give them joy and what they are good at, and maybe on the process of how they discovered that joy. And maybe if they learned, oh, I'm not good at physics, I am good at writing, or I am good at playing the trumpet or whatever, maybe that story is the story they tell, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe that story is the story they tell.
And the one thing I did really learn about writing essays is that if you can write an essay about how people are like ice cream cookie sandwiches and get into Yale if you want, right? Like, if your essay is interesting and funny and makes a good point about you and about human beings, it doesn't need to be deep and about adversity or anything.
It doesn't.
Needs to talk about you and be interesting.
Yeah, but now those essays. So there's an essay, and I'll use this when I speak at schools and organizations. And it went viral about 3 years ago, and it's about It was called. So this girl got into Yale, and it was called the Papa John's Pizza Essay, and it's very short.
That's what I'm referencing.
Yeah. And it's not a common app or personal statement. So those are, max 650 words. This is short, but if you really unpack, and this is the English teacher coming in,
it's an amazing essay.
It's an amazing essay, and so, but that's a great teachable moment, and anyone listening to this can still find that essay. And so, I'll have students will look at that, and I'll say, well, okay, hang on. What is this essay? The doorbell rings, and there's the Papa John's pizza. And what does this short but effective essay say about the applicant? And it's hard to determine at first. So clearly, if she's applying to Yale and she got in, clearly this student has the SAT scores. Probably has phenomenal
impeccable
grades.
Credentials. Yes.
Okay. But then at first, I love introducing like a workshop with this essay, because like these seniors are like, like whatever. But then what is the subtlety? And then furthermore, looking at writing technique, look at the sophistication of language and syntax and diction used, which is, that's studied in a lot of AP English classes, right? And so it's incredibly clever. You're right. These essays do not have to be about a difficulty or an obstacle, but colleges do seem to love when students recognize a moment of growth.
Yes,
Whether,
absolutely.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my favorite essay that I ever had a student of mine was a student of mine that did get into Yale, and the essay I helped him with was he wrote an essay about his piano that he would practice on from the perspective of his piano and how his piano felt every time he left it to not play it. And
so funny. I love
it
that.
is
Yeah.
the most brilliant thing that I've ever read. And I didn't come up with that idea. I could never have come up with that idea. And that's why that student got into Yale. And the only contributions I made was to take out when he said, I felt bad when he went to study for all those AP tests and all those and study so hard. I had him tone down a little bit of the name dropping of the AP tests.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit, because I'm like, hey, you got a brilliant idea there. You don't need to name drop every name of every AP test. But it's brilliant because it said something about him as a person.
Yes.
And the emotional connection he felt to the music. But he was able to, and this comes back to something you said earlier, Kristen, about it's hard for us to say things about ourselves. And so he was able to say things by making the essay not even be from his own perspective. And so he was able to say some emotional things by not making it from his own perspective. And I think these are neat tricks.
Yeah, that is a neat trick. I had a mom last year who had a superstar student, and she said he just is having a really difficult time because he doesn't want to brag about himself. And he is having a difficult time to emotionally connect. So, I think what's really important, again, before getting into what am I going to write about and, what sparkling writing techniques can I bring in to make this really shine, is to take a step back and for these seniors, this is a little bit of strategic planning to say, well, what are my strengths academically? Am I going to have those amazing SAT scores? Am I middle of the road, or am I actually a really low test taker? Right. And then what am I like as a writer? Have I gone to a high school where I've written 2 essays or 22? Yeah. I mean, that's huge, right? So to recognize, or whether I've written 22, I've really never gotten better than a B-, and that was a teacher who gave everyone an A, right? And so to do an analysis of what am I going for here with my overall application, right? What strength, who am I? How do I see the world? What are my values? And what do I have to offer this college? And so once those strengths are assessed, both in the individual and how that's going to play out in the application, then the question is, where do we go with the essay? Right? Because my number one question that students ask me and parents ask me, and even right now I have parents saying, well, the number one question is, what should my son write about?
Yeah, you can't start there, right?
Or better yet, this is what I'm getting all the time, which leads to another topic of how much, and we could do a whole session on this, like to what extent should parents be involved?
Oh, yeah, don't get me started there.
Rough.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of my clients are word of mouth. They're moms that know me from my own kids, the soccer sidelines across, and they'll say, "Oh, Amy, I know exactly what my daughter's going to write about." And I'm like,
no.
Okay. I mean, I think to answer your question before about an essay that stands out to me, I think one of the most outstanding essays I've ever seen in doing this for so long was a senior who wrote about a topic her mom said, please don't have her write about this.
And you're like, ooh, better check this topic out.
It was the most beautiful essay ever. And Kristen, I think I told you about this after 10 drafts of this essay in tears, and I'll tell you about the topic in a second. This girl looked at me and said, I can't believe I wrote this, Mrs. Haskell. And I said, well, what level English class are you? And I said, why aren't you in the highest? And you're a beautiful writer. And she said, I've never worked this hard. And she said, I love this so much. And she got into everywhere that she
that's so wonderful.
So that is another issue so first of all, the topic will come to you. Don't force it. The topic will come to you if you have clarity on back to that strategy. What do you want the essay to do for you? Right? And then number 2, who's writing, whose voice is this? If this is the child applying to college, we need, this essay to come from the heart and the mind of the child.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Are there, like, just on the kind of theme of our show, which is untangling things, are there a couple of just pieces of advice of just like a couple of things that would make it simpler for
Yeah.
people? Like, what are a couple of ways to make the process simpler?
Yeah.
If like, because, and also, like, I would like to know about the practicalities of how a student who lives in Dallas or lives wherever who's watching this, how do they sign up for your course? How do they work with you?
Yes.
But if they're not going to, what are two or a couple of things just to simplify the process if they're not, but both of those things?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. First of all, number one, let time be your friend. Right. And so if you're a junior right now, and you're wondering about this, whether you've had older siblings go through the college process, you're your own person, first of all, get an idea of what we said before. Number one, where are you with your writing skills? Like, are you going to be able to rattle off that Common App essay? It's going to be good. You're an AP, you've got nothing less than a B+ your entire writing. But if not, then to admit, just keep it simple. Admit that the essay is going to take some work, and it's going to take trusted sources, whether it's a tutor, a teacher, a really smart friend or sibling, or a parent, if that's okay, right? To read it.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
So don't try to do it on your own. Use help, right?
Use help. I mean, look, what published author has never
they always thank all these people who helped them and talked to them and helped them do research.
I think to keep it simple, and also to look out for, if you are that kid that has always gotten an A in an English essay or social studies, definitely get over yourself in seeking out help, because I don't know what your English department is like. I mean, there are many high schools out there where if you were to stack and compare the rigor of the writing curriculum compared to a lot of hotshot high schools or prep schools.
I was that kid, and I was too egotistical to let anyone help me. My parents hired someone to help me with my essays, and I refused to let them help me.
Okay.
And I was rejected by Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and Princeton. So, just saying.
Well, and I think
I was very happy going on full scholarship to TCU, but perhaps might have done a little better in my college admissions process if I had let someone else read my essay, which I'm sure was quite which I'm sure if I read now, I would say this is not okay. I know it was not okay.
Right. And
so, guys, we're getting towards the end of the half hour. So I do want to, but I think what I'm hearing you guys say, I've been listening closely, and that is, don't write about the obvious. There's some obvious things that everybody writes about. Avoid that and get a little bit of clarity and write about something that is unique to yourself.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. Right. And to seek help. And Amy, I heard you loud and clear. It's get ahead of it, because one of the things that I definitely see the students do is, if it's something that's scary, they're burying their heads, and then all of a sudden time isn't on their side, and they're racing, and now they're not taking the time that they need to make this, make this work.
Of course. I mean, I say to parents, how great for your rising senior, especially if they play a fall sport or if they don't, to be done with the Common App or the personal statement by the first day of senior year. Why not?
Oh, Lord, yes.
Yes.
That's
and
a
I
huge
think
goal.
if you're a parent listening, you need to replay that one sentence right there and talk to your student about that. That's huge. Get ahead of it.
Huge.
Oh my gosh,
and relax, and then have fun with the rest of the supplemental essays, college visits. But there's absolutely no reason. And so, great question is, well, I get all the time, well, how many hours? And I'll say, well, again, depending on your students' writing ability, why don't we just say 10 hours for the Common App or personal statement? Bobby, you're probably saying, oh my gosh, I spent 10 minutes on mine.
No,
but if you want to really
10 hours is short.
I mean, that's what I found.
It takes forever. It takes so long. I mean, especially because so many people apply to so many colleges now.
Right.
Yeah, it just takes forever.
So stay ahead of it, and
And how do people sign up for your course, and
Yeah.
like, can they work with you one-on-one, and they can
Yes,
take a
absolutely.
course and
Yeah. My bestseller, so you can find my website, which is totalwritingenrichment.com. I'm also on Facebook, and I send out a lot of useful tips and tricks
cool.
all the time at Total Writing Enrichment. And you can sign up for my program, and you can also sign up for one-on-one time with me. And I do have some fabulous writing instructors that help me out when I get so busy. So
Cool.
it is with great love and care for these students and their parents that propels me to extend my help to everyone. So I know how important it is. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, this has been so wonderful.
So fun. So fun.
Well, and you can always find me at Bobby Hood. Actually, now, as of today, it's now BobbyHoodOnlineTutoring.com, although BobbyHoodTestPrep.com will auto-forward over there. So I am like rebranding my website, and it's all going to look different. So that's exciting.
So I have to change the trailer on the bottom of the
Yeah,
the
I mean,
ticker tape, I
it'll
guess.
auto redirect for like 6 months, but it is literally launching as a new site today or something. I don't know, or tomorrow or something. But it'll redirect, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Awesome.
so, yeah, fun.
You can find me at KristenClark.com or Kristen Clark Coaching on Facebook, as you know, if you're listening.
Thanks so much for joining us, Amy, and
Thank you so much. This was a blast.
thank you, Kristen.
All right,
This
we
was
appreciate the time.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you, Kristen.
Bye.
Bye.